In Eloquent model, you can provide a lot of properties, or in fact most of them you would override the default values of the properties by just adding properties here. So probably the most well known is that you can override the table name. So if you provide the table, protected table, this is auto-completed by my PHP Storm, you can specify that your model should work not with the tasks by default, but with, for example, project tasks, like this. So that's one thing you could override. Next thing I wanted to show you is you can override the primary key. Primary key, which is by default ID. So in your tasks migration, you have ID. But what if you want to name it differently? ID, for example, task ID, like this. Then you would override the primary key in your model, and then everywhere that Eloquent is trying to search by primary key, for example, in task find or similar operations, it would use this primary key. That primary key may still be auto-incremented. It's just about the name of the field. You can override it in your model if it's different in your migration. What if you don't want it to be auto-increment? Maybe you will set it up yourself manually with some kind of logic. Then you can provide incrementing, which is by default true. You can set it up to false. Then when you create the task, it will not be auto-incremented. And then in your migration, probably you should have something like unsigned big integer without auto-increment. Or, by the way, if you want to use UUIDs specifically for that, in one of the latest version, Laravel 9.30, there's a trait for that, has UUIDs, which will automatically generate your primary key value to UUID. I will delete it for now. Next thing you can provide, or in fact override, is a property called per page, which is by default 15 from what I remember. It would be used in all of your pagination requests. So for example, if we set it up to 10 and somewhere in your controller, let's open home controller or whatever, you do task paginate, then the amount of results per page, you can specify it here for all the requests, or you can specify it in the model for any paginated requests anywhere in your controllers or anywhere. The task model will be paginated 10 per page. And then a few things about timestamps. So by default in your migration you have timestamps, which is created at and updated at, right? You can refuse to use that. Maybe you have some other logic for timestamps, or maybe you don't want to use that at all. In your model you can provide timestamps equals false. Then in your migration you don't have the timestamps and you don't need them probably. Then Eloquent will not try to automatically fill in created at and updated at, because it will look at the settings, timestamps false, so no need to do anything with timestamps. Or another case, maybe the names of your timestamps are different. For example, if you have database from older project, not even Laravel, maybe you have not created at and updated at, but time created and time updated, for example. Then you can override the constants. So constant created at equals not created at, but for example time created, and similarly constant updated at would be time updated, like this. Then of course timestamp false is irrelevant. So yeah, this will be the fields, and of course then in the migration you don't do table timestamps, you create those things manually. So these are probably the most important things that you can override in the model to be used everywhere that model is used elsewhere in the code.